to learn about data operation actions in Power Automate. Here's a list of the data operations that are available in Power Automate: the compose action, the select action, parse JSON action, join action, filter array action, create CSV table action, and create HTML table. I will now go into reviewing each one of these data operations in a detailed demo. So the first data operation we're going to look at is the compose data operation. So I have a manual trigger flow step inside my Power Automate map here. I'm going to add a new step. We're going to select built-in step or action, and I'm going to select data operation. So here's a list of all the data operations and we're going to look at the compose. So what compose data operation allows me to do is get an input. So it could be, a string, a number, a GUID, or some other input of some sort, or an array of values, and store that in the system. So as an example, I'm just going to store the number 1. And at this point, I'm just going to hit save on this map. We're going to test this. So I'm going to manually trigger the flow by going to test, perform the trigger action, we'll hit test, run the flow. And now I can see that the flow is run and my compose step has an output of the value 1 in it. So where this is useful is I can set a value and then use that in other steps within my flow if I'd like. And we'll see how this becomes more useful in storing JSON objects and those types of things in the future. The next data operation we want to look at is the join data operation. So I'm going to add a new step. Go to built-in, select data operation, and we're going to look at the join data operation. So basically what I want to do, or what the join allows me to do, is take an existing array. So let's say we have an array of names as an example. So a simple array of names, and I want to replace or join each one of these names with some semicolon as an example. What this will allow me to do is, as an example, I could take an array and join with semicolon, so that I could then output that as a string to be used as an example with a list of emails. So let's just save that, and we're going to test this by using the trigger flow once again. We'll run the flow. And here's the output. So I have Paul, Dan, John separated by semicolons instead of comma. So another operation is the parse JSON operation. So what that is I have a manual trigger flow, which we've reviewed previous, and I have this new operation called initialize variable. What this is I'm just going to open this up and show you. So basically I have an object that I've called list, but it could be called anything I want. It's an array, and in that array I've just passed in a JSON object. So you might be asking, what is a JSON object? JSON is JavaScript object. It's a lightweight language. Allows you to make a call to a web service or an API, and then basically get that object back in an array format here. And what we need to do is, because this is an array, we need to parse this out. So we'll need to get the schema of the JSON object. So in this example, I have created a JSON object with name, last name, email, and role as 4 different objects within that array. And then I have a second record within the array with the exact same fields, as you can see. But the important piece here is now we need to add a parse step to this. So what we would do is add new step, and we would select built-in and select our data operation, and we want to select parse JSON. First thing it's going to ask us is what is the content. So we're going to click on that field, and we have to go add dynamic value, and we initialized a variable which is holding our array, and we named it list. So that's what this variable is here. So that's this list variable. Next thing it wants to know is what is the schema. We can generate a sample schema from the JSON object. So basically you can just paste in the object that you initially had. So as an example, I can just go in here, select our JSON object, Control C, and we're going to go into our schema, Control V to paste that in. And then we can select or hit generate from sample. Sorry, I have to paste in the sample file into there. So let me back out of this and get rid of this again, because this will generate our schema. So we'll generate, and then we would normally paste in our sample, hit done. As you can see, this has now created our schema, which has type of array, the items in there, there's objects. So it has name, which is type string, last name, which is string as well, it has email, which is a string, a role, which is string. So it's basically just defining what the file looks like and what are the required fields. And at this point, we parse the JSON object, and we're ready to use this. So as an example, we can just hit save to our map, and we're going to test this. Run the flow. If we go to the JSON object, we have our object, we have our schema. Scroll down here, we'll see that we have the body, which is the output, which is exactly the same as our array. However, each one of these fields is broken out and available to us to use in later steps. So as an example, I could add another step to this, and we're going to go to built-in role, data operation, and we will look at the select step next. What I want to show you is that I have the list object, I also have the body object here, and then I have the name, last name, email, and role all available to me as separate fields that I can now use in future steps because I've parsed that JSON object or that array further down. The next data operation we're going to look at is the select operation. So what the select operation allows you to do is to add, remove, or rename elements in each object of the array. It's useful when you want to perform operations and store into a new object, then it can be used. So as an example, we've parsed our JSON object here. We're going to add a new select step. So right now we have the name and the last name, but let's say we want the full name as another field available to us to use in a future step. So we can do that by going to built-in values, data operations, and selecting the select step. So from our object, so we're going to select this from the body, which is we've already parsed, and then we can give it a name. So we'll say full name is our new field, and then we can put in dynamic values. So we have name, and then we're going to put a space after name, and we're going to select the last name. And insert that into our step. So now I'll hit save. And we're going to select test. We'll perform the trigger action and run the flow. And you'll notice that our select operation now, we have full name, Paul Johnson, Dan Davis, as two values that are available in the select operation. And once again, this can be used later on within your flow. Another operation is the filter operation. So this allows you to reduce the number of objects in the array to a subset that matches the criteria you provide. So as an example, let's say we only want the object of, or the record of the array where the username equals Paul. So we can do that by adding a new step. Built-in arrays, data operations, and we're going to select our filter array. What array do we want to filter? So we can filter the list array, choose which value we want to apply the filter on. So we'll say name is equal to, and we'll select Paul. And one other thing you can do is, actually, let's delete this. We'll apply a new step, data operation. So we're going to apply the filter. We're going to apply this to the body, choose a value. So our name is equal to Paul. And we will now save this map. And we'll run a test. And we'll notice that the outflow, or the output of this filter, is that instead of it returning every single record in our array, so Paul and Dan, as an example, is our initial array, we now only have Paul being returned in the output of this array. The other two operations available to us are the createcsv and createhtml tables. So I'll add a new step. We'll add those steps, data operations. So first one we'll look at is the createcsv table. So create a CSV table from what record or what dynamic value. So it'll be our output list, the body of the JSON object, under advanced value, we can also define the headers of the columns. Right now, we'll just leave it as that. So it'll just be the body and the record. So I'll hit save. And we'll test this again and run the flow. And you'll notice that our initial JSON object had the array, and then we selected the array itself, and this was the first and last name. But if I look at the output of the CSV table, you'll notice I have headers, name, last name, email, role, and then I have each value is comma separated, just as a CSV file would be. So where this is useful is if I want to parse the JSON, get an object, and then pass that into a step within the flow that would output to another system that requires a CSV file, as an example. We'll do something similar with exporting to HTML. So let's just remove this step. We'll delete that. We'll add a new step and we'll add the